Councillor Fitzpatrick.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Unfortunately, I will not be able to concur with you or support your motion. I agree with Councillor McAuliffe that when we are considering land in this development plan, the ownership of the land is not our primary concern. Like Councillor Heaney, I too have aunts who were nuns, and I was educated by the Dominican nuns in Cabra, and I attend church regularly. That's not what my interest here is, and I really think it's inappropriate of us to be having this type of emotional blackmail going on, and portraying those of us who are seeking to act responsibly in the management of the lands that have been designated for a reason in the development plan, and to have some say. We stood for election, we sought people's support to represent their interests, and now for us to seek to just abdicate that and give the planners an opportunity to write a blank cheque for whatever planning applications come before them, it is an indictment of us all. And all I would say to those councillors here who vote tonight to cede their responsibility, don't complain again in this chamber, please, about central government or national government or anybody else taking your powers. If you have an interest in this, just demonstrate your interest tonight and say that you want to have a say in the development of these lands, and act constructively with not just the Council but with the owners of the lands. Thank you.
Councillor Quinn.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'm also against reinserting residential into Z15. I think if there's a sort of a deep-seated principle here, it's this: it's whether or not you believe the private owner of land should really be able to do what they want with their land, or whether or not people who have land are entitled to use it according to the permission the community gives. And in fact, the law on this is clear. We are given the task of setting zonings and applying the zonings. And here we're talking about what should be the definition of resource land. Should our city have a zoning where we're entitled to give certain lands the Z15 resource land definition? We do have a zoning for residential, and that's there, and there's no problem with that. If we allow residential to be in virtually every zoning, we're simply diluting the clarity of the plan. And I see things differently from Councillor McGinley. He says in dangerous times, you're better off doing nothing. Precisely the opposite. In the next 20 years, we are going to see a massive change in the organisations that are able to run our schools and our hospitals. But the city is still going to need schools and hospitals. It's still going to need recreational facilities into the future. The orders, in the case of religious orders, and there's plenty of other institutional owners besides religious orders, but in terms of them, of course they have very important needs that will need to be met. But if you simply cash in the land, it is a once-off opportunity. The land is then gone, and the money you cash it in for will eventually be gone as well. But in 20 or 30 years, when we're all not on this council, or probably most of us won't be on it in 20 or 30 years, maybe there'll be some on it, Councillor Field, maybe. Sorry, you've served the city very well. No, in fairness, in 20 or 30 years, there are people who are going to be saying, what the hell are you, why didn't you protect resource lands? So I think we need the zoning. We can have other debates, as the other councillors said, about specific sites, but let's at least in principle have a proper zoning to protect the future of the city.
Councillor Flynn.
Thank you very much. I think this debate should take itself away from the congregations of religious and those who profess their faith. I think it's getting very confused in relation to those statements coming from councillors. The simple situation is, the way I see it is, are these people, are their legitimate rights being honoured here in terms of the way they wish to develop their lands? Do we view them as a developer, as a commercial developer, or do we view them, as providers of education over the long periods of time, or rehabilitation over the long periods of time that they've had within the state? What I would like to know is what the law officer has to say, that if we vote against your motion and we deny the opportunity to develop these lands, can they take a case against Dublin City Council to the courts on the grounds of legitimate expectation? There are areas within there, whereby, these are big facilities, they are big parcels of land, and I'm all on for saving as much land as I possibly can for the citizens going into the future. Absolutely. And I think it's about time we woke up to those duties of care that we have to have. But remember this much: no one raised their eyebrows when half of St. Stephen's Green is going to go by the Railway Procurement Agency. Voomp. Well, that was a green space. Gone entirely. No one seemed to open their mouths that much over the last 20 odd years when there was wholesale inappropriate development. So I think really we have to kind of say, give the opportunity, beg your pardon, give the opportunity, consider the situation, the residents, the Residents Association, and all of the emails we've all received, the thousands of them that I've received in relation to these issues, where there's grave concern from residents. There's also grave concern here, but we can't be contravening the law. Can the law officer of Dublin City Council give us his opinion on this issue? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Flynn. Councillor Ellis.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'd like to say I'd support your motion there. I do think that you know, we are being very, very unfair in regards to institutional lands and the way. I mean, we have examples there where there are churches and there are grounds beside them which we have put to senior citizens complexes. We've done this across the city, and I think it's very unfair that we should limit the possibilities of that happening again. And I also think that in regards to other community recreation or otherwise, we are being forced to use some of these to raise funds, whether we like it or not. We're not getting the central government fundings, and people have used the money that's gained to do this. So I think on that grounds, I think I support you, Lord Mayor, in your submission there.
Thank you, Councillor Ellis. Councillor Murray.
Thanks, Lord Mayor. Like Councillor Flynn, I actually don't see this really as an issue of private versus public ownership of the land, Lord Mayor. I mean, I actually think that's a bit irrelevant, really. It's about land use. I think the fact that they've ended up at Z15 is just the history of the land, Lord Mayor, rather than anything else. I do not want to. I mean, others have spoken about taking variations ad nauseum on these pieces of land willy-nilly as we go down through this council term. I think we should make a policy decision here, Lord Mayor, on this issue, and I would be supporting your motion. Thanks.
Councillor Farrell.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. No, I won't be supporting your motion, but I agree with Councillor Flynn that I abhor the people bringing in, councillors bringing in their how they practice their religion, and because I would certainly be a supporter of the religious orders. I know the Rothminians beside me were promised in the programme of government 2002 to 2007 that the Centre of Excellence for the Blind would be provided by the government, and they were totally let down. And 5 or 6 years later now, they have a plot of land that's worth maybe 20 million less than it was originally. So some of these councillors, maybe they profess their religion, but when it comes down to it, their party comes first. I would come back to, it's a planning document. Now, I would have a lot of sympathy with the religious orders as far as some of the information that we got from the lobbyists. It just wasn't, I thought it painted a totally wrong picture. Like they were talking about there's only 53 houses have been built on Z15 property in the last during the time of the Celtic Tiger. When in actual fact hundreds of houses have received planning permission. This is just in my own area on these lands in that period. And I don't think you, Lord Mayor, or I, or the lobbyists, or the religious orders, or anybody knows exactly what's going to happen to this land, or exactly the intentions of the institutions over the next 5 or 6 years. But I would say, though, that I would have a lot of sympathy, and I believe it's a fact about the problems they would have with the collateral for money, and not being able to source money, and the ratios for their loans would be at variance, and they'd be breaking agreements, and their interest rates can go up, and the problems they would have. And I would have a lot of sympathy with that, and I'm torn really on this particular these particular motions. But I think again it comes down to it's a planning document. This is an arena for planning, and I think the variation is a way of taking the decisions back into the power of the local residents. And thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Farrell. Councillor Tony.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Like Councillor Heaney, I'll declare a few interests. I have 2 first cousins, priests. I was educated by the Mercy Nuns on Booterstown Avenue and by the Maris Brothers on Lansdowne Road. But I think religions are the curse. I think religions, nationalism and racism are the curses of humanity. And I think all religions are barking mad, quite frankly. Absolutely barking mad. I think people who follow these things are deluding themselves on a gargantuan scale. Notwithstanding that, I respect the contribution that all of the people involved in philosophies that self-delude over their whole lifespans, and I think that they are owed respect because this state has failed its population to take action in education and in health and a whole lot of other issues over 100 and something years since Cardinal Cullen became triumphant. And I want to say this, that I would have to support the Lord Mayor's attitude to this, because I think in fairness some cognizance has to be taken of fair deals for everybody, and in fair deals for the institutional lands I think that there should be an insertion again of some open for consideration for residential. I think the problem with all of this is somewhat taken on board by Oisin Quinn's later motion, where he's looking for an increase proportion to 30%, which is open space. I would like to go further with that, but I wouldn't have the votes. So from that point of view, Lord Mayor, I will support your motion to get the ball rolling. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Councillor Tormey. Councillor O'Shea.
Thank you very much. I too support your motion, Lord Mayor. I've listened to this debate, and I think the person who's made the most sense to me tonight is Councillor Flynn. I listened to Councillor Fitzpatrick, and she says we are abdicating our responsibility by taking away sorry, I'm losing the train of thought. But I think by sort of saying that this matter can be dealt with by variation of the development plan if and when it arises is actually an abdication of responsibility. We should be brave enough to make the policy decision now, and I think we need to bear in mind that there have only been 53 houses built during the currency of the current development plan on 1,800 acres of institutional lands. Now, and also, looking to seek a material variation to the development plan is given as a cure for all ills. The bar is very high to get a variation to start with, and even if you do get a variation, you then don't step into the shoes of the planners. All you do is allow the owners of the institutional lands to apply for a planning permission. So, I think we need to stop. We need to have the courage to stand up and make the policy decision.
Sorry, we won't have an interruption of a speaker. Okay? Shay.
Yes, I am.
Thank you.
Can I call for a vote?
Sorry, we're not finished yet. Councillor Murphy.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'll be brief. Just to support Councillor O'Shea. I mean, our responsibility here is to make strategic policy decisions for the city in relation to zoning in particular. I think to take residential out of that at this point in time, so that at a later stage we can interfere with individual planning applications at the level of the area committee, would be wrong. So I support the motion. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
I think the manager just wants to make a comment.
I suppose I would make the comment that the primary use